Sometimes the most dangerous place for a courtier is not the battlefield, but the very palaces that made them. When revolution comes and crowds turn angry, those golden connections become death sentences, and the crowns that once smiled upon their favorites can watch them die without lifting a finger. Throughout history, royal courts have been theaters of ambition, where charm could elevate a man to unimaginable heights and destroy him just as quickly. In the glittering salons of 18th century Europe, where a single glance from a queen could make or ruin a reputation, one man mastered the deadly game of royal favor better than almost anyone. His name was Count Axel von Fersen, and he became the most sought-after courtier of his generation, welcomed in every palace from Stockholm to Versailles. Tall, elegant, and possessed of an almost magnetic charisma, Fersen moved through European high society like he was born to it. Kings trusted him. Queens confided in him. Diplomats sought his counsel. For decades, he seemed untouchable, protected by the golden shield of royal approval. But that same shield would eventually become his target. Because in the brutal mathematics of revolution and political survival, yesterday's royal favorite becomes today's scapegoat. When angry crowds demand blood and nervous governments need someone to blame, the courtier who once whispered in royal ears becomes the perfect sacrifice. Fersen's extraordinary charm had lifted him to the pinnacle of European power, but it would also mark him for one of the most horrific public deaths in Scandinavian history. The transformation from golden courtier to lynching victim didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, methodical destruction that began in the drawing rooms of Versailles and ended in the blood-soaked streets of Stockholm. Every alliance he made, every secret he kept, every rescue he attempted for the doomed French royal family, all of it would be weaponized against him when the political winds shifted. On June 20th, 1810, as a frenzied mob surrounded him in broad daylight, beating him to death with stones and sticks, the Swedish royal family he had served watched from their palace windows. They made no move to save him. They issued no orders to disperse the crowd. They simply observed as their former favorite was murdered in the street below, his decades of loyalty repaid with calculated silence. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep making documentaries like this. But to understand how one of Europe's most powerful men ended up abandoned to die like a common criminal, we need to go back to where it all began, in the aristocratic world of 18th century Sweden, where a young count first learned the intoxicating and ultimately fatal power of royal favor. Hans Axel von Fersen was born into Swedish nobility in 1755, the son of one of the most powerful families in the kingdom. The Fersens weren't just aristocrats. They were kingmakers, the kind of dynasty that had shaped Swedish politics for generations. His father, Frederick Axel von Fersen, served as Marshal of the realm and commanded absolute respect at the court of King Gustav III. From his earliest days, young Axel breathed the rarefied air of royal proximity. But Sweden's nobility operated differently from other European courts. While French aristocrats lounged in gilded salons, Swedish nobles were expected to be warriors first, diplomats second. Axel received a military education befitting his rank, training with the finest regiments and learning the arts of war alongside the arts of conversation. By his teens, he had mastered both the sword and the salon, a combination that would serve him well in the cosmopolitan courts of Europe. At 18, following aristocratic tradition, Fersen embarked on his grand tour, that essential journey through European capitals that transformed provincial nobles into international sophisticates. But this wasn't merely educational tourism. His father had carefully planned each stop to build political connections that would serve Swedish interests for decades to come. The young count would visit courts, attend diplomatic functions, and most importantly, make the kinds of personal relationships that transcended national boundaries. His first major stop was France, where he arrived in 1773 with letters of introduction to the highest circles of Versailles. The timing was perfect. King Louis XVI had just married the young Austrian Archduchess Marie Antoinette, and the French court was hungry for fresh faces and new entertainments. Fersen possessed exactly what Versailles craved: exotic Nordic elegance combined with military bearing and fluent French. Within weeks of his arrival, he had captivated salon society. French nobles found his blend of Scandinavian reserve and continental sophistication irresistible. He was invited to the most exclusive gatherings, introduced to the most influential families, and gradually worked his way into the inner circle surrounding the new Dauphin. His tall frame, striking blue eyes, and natural grace made him a favorite dancing partner at court balls. But it was his intelligence that truly set him apart. Fersen possessed an almost supernatural ability to read political currents and adapt his approach accordingly. He understood that successful courtship of royal favor required more than charm. It demanded absolute discretion, unwavering loyalty, and the wisdom to know when to speak and when to remain silent. These skills would make him indispensable to the French royal family, but they would also mark him as a dangerous conspirator when revolution came. By 1774, Axel von Fersen had established himself as more than just another foreign visitor to Versailles. He had become a confidant, a trusted voice in the Queen's circle, and crucially, a man who knew where all the royal secrets were buried. That knowledge would elevate him to extraordinary heights and eventually seal his doom in the most brutal way imaginable. What began as courtly friendship at Versailles quickly transformed into something far more dangerous, a bond that would define both their lives and ultimately destroy them both. Marie Antoinette, barely 19 and struggling to find her place in the suffocating protocol of French court life, found in Axel von Fersen something she had never experienced: genuine companionship without agenda. Unlike the scheming French courtiers who surrounded her, this Swedish count seemed to want nothing except her happiness. Their connection was immediate and unmistakable. At court balls, they danced together with an intimacy that sent whispers rippling through the assembled nobility. During salon gatherings, they would retreat to quiet corners for conversations that lasted hours, their heads bent close together, oblivious to the watching eyes around them. Fersen possessed a rare gift. He could make the Queen laugh during the darkest moments of court intrigue, and more importantly, he listened to her fears about France's mounting political crisis. By 1778, their relationship had evolved far beyond simple friendship. Fersen had become Marie Antoinette's most trusted confidant, the one person at Versailles who knew her genuine thoughts about the revolution brewing in the streets of Paris. While other nobles fled to safety abroad, Fersen remained by her side, organizing secret communications, coordinating with loyalist networks, and planning increasingly desperate schemes to preserve royal power. The court whispers grew louder. Diplomatic dispatches from foreign ambassadors began mentioning the Swedish count's unusual influence over French royal policy. Opposition pamphlets started linking his name romantically to the Queen, using their closeness as evidence of foreign manipulation of French affairs. What had begun as personal affection was transforming into a political liability that enemies could weaponize against both the monarchy and Fersen himself. But the Count was too deeply involved to withdraw. As France descended into revolutionary chaos, Marie Antoinette's dependence on him intensified. She trusted no one else with the royal family's most sensitive secrets, their hidden assets, their escape plans, their communications with foreign powers plotting counter-revolution. Fersen had become not just the Queen's favorite, but a primary link to the outside world as the walls of Versailles closed in around them. The revolutionary press seized on their relationship with savage efficiency. Pamphlets portrayed Fersen as the foreign puppet master controlling France through sexual influence over a weak queen. Political cartoons depicted him as Austria's agent, using romantic manipulation to drain French resources and sabotage the revolution. Every public appearance together, every private meeting, every letter exchanged was twisted into evidence of treasonous conspiracy. By 1789, as angry crowds gathered outside the palace gates demanding royal blood, Axel von Fersen found himself trapped in the most dangerous position possible. He was both indispensable to the Queen's survival and the perfect scapegoat for France's political collapse. The very loyalty that made him invaluable to Marie Antoinette had marked him for destruction by revolutionary justice, and soon he would face an impossible choice between saving himself and saving the woman who had come to depend on him completely. When the Bastille fell on July 14, 1789, the sound of shattering stone echoed far beyond Paris. It shattered the old world that had made Axel von Fersen one of Europe's most powerful men. Within weeks, the Swedish count who had once moved freely through Versailles found himself transformed from royal confidant into revolutionary enemy number one. The very qualities that had made him indispensable to Marie Antoinette, his foreign connections, his intimate knowledge of royal secrets, his unwavering loyalty, now marked him as the perfect symbol of everything the revolution sought to destroy. The revolutionary press unleashed a propaganda war against him with unprecedented viciousness. Pamphlets flooded Paris streets depicting the Swedish conspirator as the evil genius behind royal resistance to democratic change. L'Ami du Peuple and other radical newspapers published detailed accusations of his role in counter-revolutionary plotting, complete with fabricated evidence of secret communications with foreign powers. Every letter he had ever written to Marie Antoinette was reinterpreted as proof of international conspiracy against French liberty. But the real danger wasn't the propaganda. It was how quickly the revolutionary government began tracking his movements. By early 1790, Fersen discovered that his correspondence was being intercepted, his associates questioned, and his finances investigated. The National Assembly had identified him as a primary target for revolutionary justice, and bounties were quietly offered for information leading to his arrest. His diplomatic immunity as a Swedish nobleman provided only the thinnest protection against increasingly bold revolutionary authorities. Meanwhile, Marie Antoinette's desperation was driving her toward increasingly dangerous schemes. Trapped in the Tuileries Palace under virtual house arrest, she bombarded Fersen with pleas for rescue plans that grew more elaborate and more impossible with each passing month. She wanted foreign armies to march on Paris. She wanted loyal regiments to stage a coup. Most dangerously, she wanted Fersen to organize a secret escape that would allow the royal family to flee France entirely and rally European powers for a counter-revolutionary invasion. Fersen knew these plans were suicidal, but he couldn't refuse her. His emotional attachment to the Queen had become stronger than his political judgment, and her emotional dependency on him had grown absolute. While other foreign diplomats prudently distanced themselves from the doomed monarchy, Fersen doubled down on his commitment, pouring his personal fortune into bribery networks and escape preparations that had virtually no chance of success. The revolutionary surveillance net was closing around him with methodical precision. By late 1790, government agents had identified his safe houses, compromised his courier networks, and begun arresting his associates. Every day he remained in France increased the likelihood of capture and almost certain execution. But every letter from Marie Antoinette made leaving impossible. The trap was nearly complete. Revolutionary authorities knew they could use Fersen's devotion to the Queen as bait for a devastating blow against both the monarchy and its foreign supporters. All they needed was one dramatic failure, one spectacular arrest, one undeniable proof of treasonous conspiracy that would justify the most extreme revolutionary justice. And Fersen, blinded by loyalty and love, was about to hand them exactly what they needed. On the night of June 20th, 1791, Axel von Fersen orchestrated the most daring royal escape attempt in European history and delivered the most catastrophic failure of his career. For months, he had been secretly planning the flight of the French royal family from their virtual prison in the Tuileries Palace, coordinating with loyalist networks across France and arranging safe houses along a carefully mapped escape route. The plan was breathtakingly complex, disguised as servants and merchants. King Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, and their children would slip out of Paris under cover of darkness and race toward the eastern fortress town of Montmédy, where loyal troops waited to escort them to safety. Fersen had thought of everything. He personally designed the escape route, selected the relay stations, bribed the necessary officials, and even drove the getaway carriage himself through the dangerous streets of revolutionary Paris. For the first crucial hours, everything went perfectly. The royal family successfully escaped the Tuileries, met Fersen at the designated rendezvous point, and began their desperate journey toward freedom with no sign of pursuit. But revolutionary France had become a surveillance state, where every suspicious movement was reported and investigated. Within hours of their departure, palace guards discovered the royal family's absence and triggered a massive manhunt. Revolutionary authorities flooded the countryside with search parties, placed bounties on royal heads, and ordered every village to inspect passing carriages. The escape that should have taken one day stretched into a nightmarish 2-day chase across hostile territory. Please subscribe to the channel if you want more real royal stories like this. At Varennes, just 30 miles from safety, local revolutionaries recognized the disguised king despite his false papers and servants' clothes. The capture was a disaster beyond Fersen's worst fears. Not only had the royal family been arrested and dragged back to Paris in humiliation, but the entire escape network had been exposed. Revolutionary investigators seized correspondence, arrested collaborators, and most damaging of all, identified Axel von Fersen as the mastermind behind the conspiracy. The Swedish count's name was now front-page news across Europe. Revolutionary newspapers published detailed accounts of his role in the escape attempt, complete with witness testimonies and captured documents proving his central involvement. The man who had spent years operating in shadows was suddenly the most wanted foreign agent in France, with his face on wanted posters and a massive price on his head. Worse still, the failed escape had destroyed any remaining sympathy for the royal family among moderate revolutionaries. Marie Antoinette's attempt to flee France was interpreted as final proof of her treasonous intentions, and Fersen's foreign involvement confirmed suspicions that she was an Austrian agent plotting with foreign powers against French independence. The botched rescue had transformed the Queen from political prisoner into confirmed traitor deserving execution. For Fersen, there was no choice but immediate flight from France. But as he fled toward the German border, with revolutionary agents pursuing him across the countryside, he knew the failure at Varennes had sealed both their fates. The woman he loved was now marked for death, and he had become the most hated man in revolutionary Europe. The man who fled France in the summer of 1791 was no longer the golden courtier who had charmed Versailles. Axel von Fersen had become a hunted fugitive whose very name represented everything revolutionary France sought to destroy. As he crossed the German border with French agents still pursuing him, he carried with him not just the shame of spectacular failure, but the terrible knowledge that his botched rescue had likely doomed the woman he had tried to save. From his exile in Austria and Prussia, Fersen watched helplessly as the French Revolution devoured its enemies with increasing savagery. The moderate phase was over. The radical Jacobins had seized control, and their answer to counter-revolutionary plotting was systematic terror. Throughout 1792 and 1793, as revolutionary tribunals sent thousands to the guillotine, Fersen's name appeared repeatedly in official denunciations as the foreign conspirator who had corrupted the Queen and orchestrated treason against the French people. The news that shattered his world came on October 16, 1793. Marie Antoinette had been executed. The woman whose laughter had once filled Versailles, who had trusted him with her deepest secrets, who had depended on him for salvation, died alone on the scaffold while crowds cheered her death. Revolutionary newspapers published gleeful accounts of her final moments, specifically mentioning her relationship with the Swedish spy Fersen as justification for her execution. Fersen's grief transformed into something far more dangerous, an obsession with revenge that would consume the rest of his life. From his base in Vienna, he began coordinating with émigré networks across Europe, pooling resources and planning increasingly desperate schemes to restore the French monarchy and punish those responsible for royal deaths. He used his family's wealth to fund counter-revolutionary armies, supplied intelligence to coalition forces fighting France, and became a central figure in the émigré community's most radical conspiracies. But exile had made him reckless in ways that would have horrified the careful diplomatist he had once been. His correspondence, intercepted by French intelligence services, revealed detailed plans for assassination campaigns against revolutionary leaders, schemes to poison water supplies in Republican cities, and proposals for coordinated foreign invasions designed to massacre French civilians as punishment for regicide. The Swedish count, who had once been known for his discretion, was now openly advocating war crimes. These revelations devastated his reputation across Europe. Even monarchist governments that shared his hatred of French republicanism began distancing themselves from his extreme proposals. Austrian and Prussian officials, initially sympathetic to his cause, started treating him as a dangerous fanatic whose association could compromise their own diplomatic positions. By 1795, Fersen had become an international pariah, too radical for moderate monarchists, too foreign for French royalists, and too obsessed with vengeance for effective political action. As Napoleon consolidated power in France and defeated the coalition armies Fersen had helped organize, the Count's dreams of restoration crumbled entirely. The old world he had known was dead, and the new Europe emerging from revolutionary chaos had no place for men like him. Soon, he would face a choice between permanent exile and a dangerous return to Sweden, where his enemies were already preparing their own form of revolutionary justice. By 1801, the Swedish exile, who had once been Europe's most wanted counter-revolutionary, faced a stark choice: spend the rest of his life as a broken émigré in foreign courts, or return home to a kingdom that had been transformed by the same revolutionary currents that had destroyed his world in France. Napoleon's rise had made continental Europe increasingly hostile to old regime conspirators like Fersen, while his family's mounting debts and political isolation made continued exile financially impossible. Sweden offered the only refuge left: King Gustav IV. Adolf welcomed him back, but the Sweden that greeted Fersen in 1801 was barely recognizable from the aristocratic paradise he had left decades earlier. Revolutionary ideas had crossed the Baltic, inspiring demands for constitutional reform and social equality that terrified the traditional nobility. The king needed experienced hands to navigate these dangerous waters, and Fersen's reputation as a counter-revolutionary hardliner actually worked in his favor among conservative Swedish nobles desperate to prevent their own revolution. Within months of his return, Fersen had been appointed Marshal of the Realm, making him one of Sweden's highest-ranking officials and giving him direct access to royal decision-making. But his appointment also made him a lightning rod for opposition from Sweden's growing liberal movement, which viewed his involvement in French counter-revolutionary plotting as evidence that the monarchy was planning similar repression at home. The Napoleonic Wars soon engulfed Sweden in international crisis that played perfectly into Fersen's expertise in European diplomacy. As Napoleon's armies conquered most of continental Europe, Sweden faced impossible choices between accommodation and resistance. Fersen, traumatized by his experiences with revolutionary France, became the leading advocate for absolute resistance to any compromise with Napoleonic influence, regardless of the military and economic costs to Sweden. His hardline position proved disastrous. Sweden's stubborn opposition to Napoleon resulted in the loss of Finland to Russia in 1809, a military catastrophe that cost the kingdom a third of its territory and triggered a constitutional crisis. King Gustav IV Adolf was overthrown by his own nobles and replaced by his elderly uncle Charles III. But the political system remained unstable and increasingly polarized between pro-French and anti-French factions. Fersen's role in these disasters made him deeply unpopular among ordinary Swedes who blamed aristocratic incompetence for their country's humiliation. Liberal newspapers began attacking him personally, portraying him as a foreign adventurer whose loyalty lay with dead French queens rather than Swedish interests. His émigré associations were reinterpreted as evidence that he served international aristocratic conspiracies rather than Swedish national interests. The final blow to his position came with the selection of Crown Prince Carl August in 1809. The new heir to the throne was a popular Danish prince who represented hope for national renewal and reconciliation with Napoleon's Europe. For the first time in decades, Sweden had a potential leader who could unite the country and restore its international standing. Fersen's influence began to wane as the royal court rallied around their promising new heir. But Crown Prince Carl August's popularity would prove to be Axel von Fersen's death sentence, because when the prince suddenly died under mysterious circumstances, the man with the most to gain from his death would become the obvious suspect in Sweden's most shocking royal murder. On May 28, 1810, Crown Prince Carl August collapsed during a military review in Scania and died within hours, sending shockwaves through Sweden and triggering the most dangerous conspiracy theory in the kingdom's history. The popular Danish prince had been Sweden's great hope for national restoration, young, charismatic, and politically moderate enough to heal the wounds left by years of military disaster and constitutional crisis. His sudden death at the peak of his popularity created a power vacuum that threatened to destroy the fragile stability of the Swedish monarchy. The official cause of death was reported as apoplexy, a stroke brought on by the heat and exertion of the military exercises. But in a kingdom already paranoid about foreign conspiracies and aristocratic treachery, the sudden demise of the one man capable of uniting Sweden inevitably sparked darker speculation. Who had the most to gain from eliminating the Crown Prince? Who possessed the international connections necessary to arrange such a sophisticated assassination? Who had both motive and opportunity to remove Sweden's most promising leader? Every answer pointed to the same man, Axel von Fersen. The accusations began as whispers in Stockholm coffeehouses and radical newspapers, but they spread with terrifying speed through a population already primed to believe in aristocratic conspiracy. Fersen's émigré background made him the perfect suspect for foreign assassination plots. His declining influence at court gave him obvious motive to eliminate a rival. Most damning of all, his well-documented history of involvement in French royal conspiracies proved he had both the skills and contacts necessary for political murder. Opposition newspapers seized on these suspicions with savage enthusiasm. Pamphlets appeared throughout Stockholm detailing Fersen's alleged role in the prince's death, complete with fabricated evidence and witness testimonies. The same propaganda techniques that had been used against him during the French Revolution were now deployed by Swedish radicals determined to destroy the symbol of old regime aristocracy that he represented. But the conspiracy theory served deeper political purposes than simple scapegoating. Liberal politicians who wanted to break aristocratic power found in Fersen's alleged crime the perfect justification for radical constitutional reform. If Sweden's highest-ranking nobleman could murder the crown prince with impunity, the entire aristocratic system needed to be dismantled. Foreign politicians who wanted Sweden aligned with Napoleon found in the accusations a convenient excuse to demand Fersen's removal from government. Most dangerously, the royal family made no effort to defend him. King Charles III, elderly and politically weak, refused to publicly refute the murder accusations or provide royal protection for his marshal of the realm. The court that had once embraced Fersen's return now calculated that sacrificing him might be necessary to preserve monarchical stability. Royal silence in the face of mounting accusations was interpreted by the Swedish people as confirmation of Fersen's guilt. By June 1810, Axel von Fersen had become the most hated man in Sweden. Crowds gathered outside his Stockholm palace shouting death threats. Anonymous letters promised vengeance for the murdered prince. Local authorities warned that they could no longer guarantee his safety in public. The man who had once commanded armies and advised queens was now a prisoner in his own home, waiting for the inevitable moment when Swedish revolutionary justice would come for him, just as French revolutionary justice had come for Marie Antoinette. June 20th, 1810, dawned clear and warm in Stockholm, the kind of perfect summer morning that should have been reserved for celebration rather than state funeral. Crown Prince Carl August was to be buried with full royal honors, and protocol demanded that Sweden's highest-ranking officials attend the ceremony regardless of personal danger. Axel von Fersen knew that appearing in public would be suicide, but refusing to attend would be interpreted as an admission of guilt in the prince's murder. Trapped between certain death and political disgrace, he chose to face the mob. His servants begged him to stay home. His family pleaded with him to flee the country. Even sympathetic court officials warned that Stockholm's streets were seething with revolutionary hatred that made the terror in Paris look restrained. But Fersen had spent 2 decades watching royal authority crumble before popular violence, and he was determined not to give Swedish radicals the satisfaction of seeing him run like a coward. The funeral procession began peacefully enough. Thousands of Stockholmers lined the streets to pay their respects to their murdered prince, many genuinely grieving the loss of Sweden's great hope for national renewal. But as the ceremony concluded and mourners began dispersing, radical agitators who had been waiting in the crowd started pointing out Fersen's carriage and shouting accusations of regicide. Within minutes, isolated shouts became organized chanting, and organized chanting became mob hysteria. The attack began with stones thrown at his carriage windows. Then the crowd surrounded the vehicle, preventing his escape and dragging him into the street. What followed was 3 hours of methodical torture disguised as popular justice. The mob beat him with clubs, stones, and anything else they could find, pausing periodically to shout questions about the prince's murder and then resuming the beating when his answers proved unsatisfactory. Throughout this nightmare, Swedish authorities did absolutely nothing. Royal guards stationed throughout the city received no orders to intervene. Local police made no attempt to disperse the crowd or rescue the victim. Most shocking of all, members of the royal family watched the entire lynching from their palace windows without making any effort to save the man who had once served as Sweden's marshal of the realm. The message was unmistakable. The monarchy had decided that Axel von Fersen's death was politically necessary, and they were perfectly willing to let a Stockholm mob execute their former favorite while they watched in calculated silence. By sacrificing him to revolutionary violence, they hoped to appease popular anger and preserve royal authority through the storm. When Fersen's broken body was finally dragged through Stockholm's streets, the crowd's bloodlust was satiated, but Sweden's reputation as a civilized monarchy was destroyed forever. The kingdom that had once prided itself on enlightened government had revealed its willingness to use lynch mobs as instruments of state policy. proving that revolutionary violence could corrupt any political system that embraced it as a tool of convenience. The silence that followed Axel von Fersen's murder was more damning than the violence itself. No royal proclamation mourned his death. No investigation pursued his killers. No memorial honored his decades of service to the Swedish crown. The monarchy simply pretended that their former marshal of the realm had never existed, erasing him from official records with the same methodical efficiency that the Stockholm mob had erased him from the living world. This calculated amnesia revealed something terrifying about the nature of royal power. When political survival was at stake, even the most intimate royal favorites became expendable. Fersen had spent his life believing that loyalty to crowns would be reciprocated, that his sacrifices for royal families would earn him their protection when he needed it most. Instead, he discovered that monarchical gratitude lasted only as long as it remained politically convenient. The Swedish royal family's decision to sacrifice Fersen wasn't born of cowardice. It was a cold calculation that his death would serve their interests better than his survival. By allowing the mob to kill him, they satisfied popular anger while avoiding the political cost of defending an unpopular aristocrat. They transformed a potential revolution against royal authority into a controlled explosion that eliminated their most problematic courtier while preserving the monarchy itself. This betrayal established a precedent that would haunt European courts for generations. If Sweden's king could watch his marshal of the realm die in the streets without lifting a finger, what safety could any royal servant expect when political winds shifted? The message spread through diplomatic circles like wildfire. Royal favor was worthless when it conflicted with royal survival, and yesterday's indispensable courtier could become tomorrow's convenient scapegoat without warning. Fersen's story also exposed the fundamental weakness of aristocratic societies, built on personal relationships rather than institutional protections. His entire career had been based on individual connections to specific royals, making him completely vulnerable when those relationships became political liabilities. Unlike modern constitutional systems, where officials enjoy legal protections, the old regime offered no defense against royal abandonment except more royal favor, a circular dependency that guaranteed destruction when loyalty became inconvenient. The man who had once been welcomed in every European court died as an object lesson in the fragility of aristocratic power. His charmed life had been built on sand, sustained only by the continued goodwill of monarchs who owed him nothing and would sacrifice him without hesitation when circumstances demanded it. The golden courtier who had mastered the art of royal favor learned too late that in the brutal mathematics of political survival, even the most devoted servants were ultimately disposable. Please subscribe to the channel. The next story is even more unbelievable. Axel von Fersen's lynching marked the end of an era when aristocrats could believe their personal relationships with royalty would protect them from popular violence. After Stockholm, every courtier understood that when revolution came, they would face the mob alone, because crowns, when forced to choose between their servants and their survival, would always choose themselves.